Welcome back to Dynamics. Okay, so this is the next in the series of the platform videos. I'm going to be doing this one on RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr. These videos have been going a lot longer than I was anticipating them to go, and I'm looking at his platform, and it looks like this one will probably be pretty long as well. I may split it up into two videos. It just kind of depends on how long it takes for me to get through it. But yeah, I've been enjoying these, and we have the debate coming up tomorrow as of the time that I record this. I think I'll upload this right after I record it. And so just in case I don't get to make a video on this before the debate, the debates really should be including RFK Jr. That it's really kind of a travesty and you know, an affront to our version of democracy, the portion of our government that is a democracy, to not have these people represented on stage, especially in a case like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., where he has such a large base of support. Get him on the stage and you would just see that increase, and that's exactly what they're trying to avoid. I don't support RFK on everything, and you'll find that out through the course of this video, but I definitely think he should be on that stage. In fact, I'm of the mindset that every candidate that will be on the ballot for the general election should be on that stage, including Chase Oliver. But for me, it also makes sense, you know, if there's such a large number of candidates, you can't have them all up on the stage and give them equal time when they don't have that base of support. But you can't make that argument for Robert F. Kennedy. He is definitely going to have an impact on this election. In some cases, he's pulling more votes from Biden. In some cases, he's pulling more votes from Trump. He would definitely have an impact if he pulled himself out of the election. And honestly, the truth of it is that if the Democratic Party really wanted to make sure that Donald Trump wasn't the president going forward, that he wasn't going to win this election, they would switch from Biden to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And there is you know, polls and things like that that would say that it would be a close election, but that Robert F. Kennedy would end up pulling it out, whereas most of the polls are saying that Biden is going to lose. So I think, you know, in my mind, that what that tells me is the Democratic Party really doesn't care about winning. They don't really want to make sure that Trump's not the president for the next 4 years. They would like for Biden to win, but what they want is to make sure that they're set up after Trump's election to be able to run whoever they want to run. And if they run Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he'll be, you know, president for the next 4 years, possibly 8, you know, depending on how things go for him. And I think they would just rather not do that. So for some reason they are avoiding running Robert F. Kennedy Jr. If this election was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. versus Donald Trump, I would be pretty satisfied in knowing that no matter what the outcome was, our position would be improved. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening, and they're keeping this man off the stage, even though he should definitely be up there. So let's go through his platform. Let's see what positions he has, what positions I agree with, what positions I disagree with, and you guys can make your own determination. You know, is this the man that should be on the Democratic ticket? Should he be on stage for this debate? And how do you think he's going to impact the election? All right, so let's take a look at it. So I am on his official page, kennedy24.com/policies, and these are his policies. So I'm treating that like his platform. You know, so this is basically what he wants, how he wants to govern, and that is what I consider a platform. Okay. It doesn't call it a platform, but you get the idea. All right, so his first on his page, so mind you, he's got it in the order that he wants it on his page, or his team. By the way, he has his vice president already named. It is a person named Shanahan, it looks like. I'm going to have to look into that because I think I may have heard that before, but I don't think I know that person, or I don't have a lot of knowledge about who they are. So I want to look into that. But that's neither here nor there. Also side tangent, looks like Trump is saying he knows who's going to be his vice president, that the candidate or the person that he's choosing is going to be at the debate. I am assuming there's going to be multiple people that are up for the vice president role at the debate, and so he still doesn't have to say who is his vice president, and we probably won't find that out until the convention. So, anyways, that was a side note. Okay, so it's his first policy. It says it's we the people, not we the corporations. Learn how Kennedy will end corporate capture. All right. Well. All right, is that how we're doing this? So it looks like it's going to another page. I thought it was just going to expand it out, but that's okay. It doesn't look like it's that big of a thing here. Okay. As president, one of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s top priorities will be to dissolve the corrupt merger of state and corporate power. That means freeing government agencies from the control of big corporations. And so that's his basic premise for this position. Our food is unhealthy. Because big ag controls the Department of Agriculture, we have endless wars because military contractors control the Department of Defense, State Department, and intelligence agencies. The middle class is being decimated because Wall Street controls the Federal Reserve, Treasury, and SEC. Our environment is a toxic mess because big polluters and extractive industries control the EPA. Healthcare costs and chronic disease run rampant because Big Pharma controls the CDC, FDA, and NIH. Only an independent president beholden to neither major party can free our government from corporate capture. President Trump promised to drain the swamp, but he appointed corporate lobbyists and other swamp creatures like Scott Gottlieb, and John Bolton to key posts. And President Biden has been wallowing in the corporate-controlled Washington swamp for 50 years. More than 50 years. RFK Jr. has the experience to reclaim our government for the American people. For 40 years, he has sued countless government agencies. He knows all the tricks that corrupt officials use to advance the corporate agenda. As president, Kennedy will install honest, competent leadership throughout the federal bureaucracy, agency by agency. Root out corruption and replace corporate-friendly agency leaders with reformers and whistleblowers dedicated to the national interest. Shut the revolving door by executive order with a 5-year ban on administration officials lobbying their former government agencies. Make the agencies transparent to public view so that the American people can once again have faith that their government works for them, not big corporations. All right, so how do I feel about this? A couple of things. One, not a big fan of the whole big this, big that, big pharma, big Wall Street, big, I think that's silly talking points. Not really into that. But that's not like substantive. That's substantive. Anyways. Oh, sorry, dog. My dog is under my feet. And, she's all right. She's okay. All right. So I'm not a big fan of that, but that's more just a, jargon type thing. I'm not really interested in that as his policies. It's just not, I don't like it. And a lot of what he says does make a lot of sense. We do have a big problem with the whole, the public-private partnerships type thing. Governments trying to take over, big swaths of private industry, and private industry trying to have an inordinate, I'm going to say words that I'm going to have trouble saying today apparently, having too much, sway in our government, based on the power of their corporation and the money that is behind it. So I get that, but some of this stuff it's not something that I think is the right way to handle it. For one, I wouldn't say that I'm going to make sure that I'm going to nominate people who are not insiders. What's it say here? Where is it at? Let's see. He will install competent leadership throughout the federal bureaucracy, agency by agency. I want to see someone who's going to dismantle that bureaucracy, agency by agency, not try to learn how to run it better. There's just too much, so it needs to be consolidated greatly. So I'm not really with him on that so much, but that would be better than what we currently have. So it still would be an improvement. It's just not the right direction in my mind. But in general, his idea is to try to have the government refocused on the individuals, which is always a great thing. The American people instead of the American corporations, that's also a great thing. So while I agree with him on his wide premise, a lot of the implementation and the wording and that sort of thing, I'm not really with him on. All right. Next. All right. Did it go back? Okay, here we go. All right. Next, people who work hard should be able to afford a good life. Learn how Kennedy will address the affordability crisis. And so that's how he's wording that, the affordability crisis. A lot of people are saying it's just, cost of living has just increased dramatically in the last 4 years. And so, so people refer to inflation. It's not 100% an issue with inflation, although inflation has been one of the worst things happening under Biden's presidency. But cost of living in general, not just because of inflation. And so let's see how he handles it. That is the guiding principle of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s economic policy. It's hard to believe that once upon a time a blue-collar worker with a high school education could support a family, take vacations, and even save for retirement. Technology has made our productivity many times higher. So why is life poorer, not richer, than in the 1960s? Why do people just accept that life will get slowly worse? Kennedy does not accept it. We can restore the American middle class by reversing the missteps of the last 50 years. A massive military machine has nearly bankrupted this country. Rampant corruption in Washington has put corporations in charge, enriching the wealthiest as working people have dropped out of the middle class. Official unemployment is low, but most of the new jobs are in the low-pay service sector. Wealth inequality in the country is at a 100-year high. More than 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck with no savings for an emergency. Take-home pay after inflation and taxes has fallen 9% since Biden took office. Under the Biden administration, the price of the average home has risen from $250,000 to around $400,000. And mortgage rates have more than doubled. Rents have followed the trend, putting more and more people on the edge of catastrophe, but we can turn it around. Being able to afford a decent life doesn't mean working more hours, it means higher pay and lower bills. Here is what Kennedy will do to make it a reality. Raise the minimum wage to $15, which is the equivalent to its 1967 level. Prosecute union-busting corporations so that labor can organize and negotiate fair wages. Expand free childcare to millions of families with programs like that pioneered by the state of New Mexico. Drop housing costs by $1,000 per family and make home ownership affordable by backing 3% home mortgages with tax-free bonds. Cut energy prices by restricting natural gas exports. Support small business by redirecting regulatory scrutiny onto larger businesses. Secure the border and bring illegal immigration to a halt so that undocumented migrants won't undercut wages. Negotiate trade deals with trade deals that prevent low-wage countries from competing with American workers in a race to the bottom. Rein in military spending and use the resources to fund infrastructure, healthcare, higher education, childcare, and domestic prosperity. Reverse the chronic disease epidemic that is a $3.7 trillion drag on families and the American economy. Clean out the corruption in Washington, D.C., which funnels so much of our nation's wealth to giant corporations and billionaires. Establish addiction healing centers on organic farms across the country. Make student debt dischargeable in bankruptcy and cut interest rates on student loans to zero. Cut drug costs by half to bring them in line with other nations. Okay. People always ask, how are we going to pay for all of this? The answer is simple. First is to end the military adventures and regime change wars like the one in Ukraine. The wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and Libya already cost us over $8 trillion. That's $90,000 per family of 4. That's enough to pay off all medical debt, all credit card debt, provide free child care, feed every hungry child, repair our infrastructure, and make college tuition free with money left over. That's enough to make Social Security solvent for another 30 years. Second is to end the corruption in Washington, the corporate giveaways, the boondoggles, the bailouts too big to fail that leave the little guy at the mercy of the market. Corporations right now are sitting on $8 trillion in cash. Their contribution to tax revenues was 33% in 1950s. It is 10% today. It's high time they paid their fair share. Our presidents have tinkered on the edges, but Robert F. Kennedy will make the deep changes necessary to put the economy on sound footing. The broad prosperity of Eisenhower and JFK area can be ours again. It is a shift of priorities away. It is just a shift of priorities away. Okay. All right. So as you can see, a lot of people try to claim that Robert F. Kennedy is right-wing. He obviously is not. He is not a libertarian. He is not right-wing. He is a left-wing Democrat. He just has some common sense on certain things. But as you can see from these positions, they aren't a whole lot different than a lot of what Biden has. He just believes that he will implement them better. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about, who you want to vote for. If you're a Biden supporter, and not a Biden supporter, if you're a supporter of left-wing policies that you think that Biden supports or pushes, Robert F. Kennedy might be the right candidate for you instead of Biden. This is just, based on his policies alone. So, all right. Let's take a look at it a little bit deeper, but I don't want to dwell too long on it. Okay, so raise the minimum wage to $15. It's a terrible idea. Minimum wage being raised across the country is a large part of the cost of living increase. So raising minimum wage to try to meet the cost of living increase is a self-defeating solution. It just causes there to be more of a cost of living increase when you do that. The cost of living is what should dictate wages, not a minimum wage. And so if you have a place where the cost of living is higher and you don't pay your employees enough to survive, then they will leave and go to another place of employment, or oftentimes under Biden's regime, get multiple jobs to try to satisfy that. But a minimum wage really just causes everybody to get paid at a lower cost or a lower life. What's the word I'm trying to say? Their life standards are not going to be higher. It's going to bring everybody down to this lower level, and you're going to have everybody competing for this minimum wage instead of trying to advance and improve themselves. Right? Okay. Not a big fan of federal minimum wages, not a big fan of state minimum wages. I think that wages should be dictated based on your local situation. And you see this happening in certain places where there are high-paying jobs which force low-paying jobs to raise their wages to be able to hold on to or to have employees. Because if they don't meet the other high-paying jobs in the area, then they won't have any employees. You can, and you'll see that a lot in places like California, even if they weren't raising the minimum wage. People in, fast food industry were already getting paid a substantial amount of money, especially in certain types of fast food places like In-N-Out. And it wasn't due to the increase of minimum wage. It was due to the fact that they needed to try to have some employees to work their restaurants, so they had to pay more. That's how wages should operate, not as a dictate. Anyway, spending too much time on that. Prosecute union-busting corporations. I I just don't think that the government should be involved in unions at all. Unions, if they can form naturally, then they will. If the corporation is able to prevent that from happening, then people should be, employees should be able to leave and go find an employer that they have more faith in. Private sector employees unions are great in certain circumstances, but they aren't necessary in every job situation. So, if a corporation is successful at busting a union, maybe that's because the union wasn't needed, and the union itself is just trying to enrich itself. You'll see that oftentimes where the employees don't actually support the union, and so it's easy for a corporation to bust a union when the employees don't support the union, and then you have the government coming in and trying to force a union into place. No, I don't agree with that. I also don't think that we should have public unions at all. If you work for the government, you should not be involved in a union, and you should not have unions negotiating with government employees to raise government employees' wages. It just, it's a conflict of interest. We'll just say that. All right, expand free childcare to millions of families with programs like that pioneered by the state of New Mexico. Childcare, free childcare. It's tough to have free programs in this day and age. It's tough to advocate for more spending. But here's my take on it, and this is seems to be his take on it. I disagree with some of the ways, but he thinks that you could reallocate money we are already spending from other programs to programs you find more important. So if the government is already spending trillions of dollars, you could take billions of it from one program and move it to another program that you find to be more suitable for the government to be involved in. And so taking money from one section of the budget and moving it to another, I am less opposed to, but it's tough when we're already overspending, right? So we need to cut spending in general, and so just moving around spending doesn't cut spending. So, it's a complicated situation. If we had a balanced budget amendment and we started from zero, where we had zero-based budgeting, then we can allocate the budget to the most important priorities first. And if childcare, providing childcare for the nation is part of that priority system, great. But if we're just saying, hey, we're just going to spend more money, who cares about the debt? You're providing childcare for children who are going to grow up to a country in collapse. So, all right. Drop housing costs by $1,000 per family and make home ownership affordable by backing 3% home mortgages with tax-free bonds. Again, getting the government too involved in the housing sector has not historically been a good idea. I'm just going to leave it at that. And I'll add on, not leave it at that, add on very similar arguments to what I made in the previous thing. I could make those over and over again for most of the new spending ideas he's throwing out there. So just cut and paste. But specifically, getting the government involved in housing has not worked out well, typically. Cut energy prices by restricting natural gas exports. Interesting. I am not an expert on this topic, so let's just keep that in mind. But in my mind, they wouldn't be exporting it if we used it here. And they wouldn't be exporting it if they weren't getting a better price somewhere else. So if we needed it here and we were able to be competitive, it wouldn't get exported. And if the government wasn't over-regulating, it probably, again, would be less likely to be exported. Let's work on that. Not restricting it, not just saying, oh, we're not going to fix the problems, we're going to fix the symptom. Government does that a lot. They make the problem and then try to fix the symptom, whereas they could fix the problem itself or not make the problem to begin with. All right. Support small businesses by redirecting regulatory scrutiny onto larger corporations, or just cut regulatory scrutiny substantially in general. But yes, if you're going to have regulatory scrutiny, your focus should be on the larger corporations, not on the small businesses. Secure the border and bring illegal immigration to a halt so that undocumented migrants won't undercut wages. While true, and yes, and I agree, if you secure the border and expand the immigration system to allow people to come here legally, one of the things that will happen, and it'll be a plus and a minus, mostly a positive in my mind, is the migrants who will be coming here legally will be getting paid the same as migrants that or people that are here. There is a way around that, so that we're saying that if you're coming in to work and you're willing to work for less wages, then you should legally be allowed to work for less wages, especially considering the fact that you're not making a permanent move, you're just coming here to work, and so you're taking that money back home, which goes a lot further for you because we've caused our cost of living here to shoot through the roof. I think that they should be allowed to work for less wages, and then what we can take a look at is saying what makes that something that's beneficial to everybody involved, and how do we apply that to our home workers, and part of that is we have to get the cost of living down. But I definitely agree that we should be securing the border, we should be cutting illegal immigration, but we also need to work on that legal immigration side of it, which I don't think he doesn't want to do. I think he does, but right here he's focused on just cutting the legal immigration. Okay. All right. Negotiating trade deals that prevent low-wage countries from competing with American workers in a race to the bottom. Yes, the problem is they're not going to negotiate those. You probably kind of have to improve things here. You can't just force other countries to pay higher wages. So, rein in military spending. I agree with this, by the way, before I get to the rest of this. I agree with reining in military spending. I agree in large part that can be done by reducing our footprint overseas. So we're on the same page, but then it gets weird because, well, one, why is it in this spot on his policies? Here's why. To use resources to fund infrastructure, healthcare, higher education, childcare, and domestic prosperity. No, we need to cut spending. Spending in general needs to be cut. You can't just, and I've discussed this previous in the video, you can't just reallocate funds and expect things to get better. You have to actually cut the spending, and military is one of the best places to actually get that done. So, while military spending and defense and budget, the defense budget is one of the things that really the government should be spending money on, that doesn't mean that it can't be cut. It definitely has a lot of room to have cuts and still have our defense be top notch. And a big part of that would be reducing our footprint outside of the United States, basically. But I don't think you can reallocate that money to other places because we already run deficits and we're in debt, and we need to bring that money back and just cut it from the budget. Anyways. Reverse the chronic disease epidemic so chronic disease epidemic, a large part of that is the government's not a part of, right? It's the fact that we have bad dietary choices out there, and we have bad dietary advice, and we are So this is the one thing I would say the government could do is reduce regulations on whole foods, reduce regulations on raw milk and things like that. Allow our farmers to feed our country again, because right now they're regulated to the point where it's just so much cheaper to just go and get processed foods. And when we get the cost of living down again, then people are more likely to be able to afford those whole foods that are healthier for them and would prevent their this chronic illness problem. All right. Clean the corruption in Washington, D.C. We agree with that. Funneling money to the nation, funneling much of the nation's wealth to giant corporations. I agree with that. We should not be subsidizing corporations in general. And so, yeah, I agree with that. Establish addiction healing centers on organic farms across the country. That's an interesting thing. Should the government be involved in that? Maybe not. But I don't hate the idea. I think organic farms need to be reestablished and need to be, there needs to be a larger amount of them across the country. And having addiction healing centers there, seems like such a niche thing. I'm not sure how that works, but I'd be interested in hearing about it. I just need to say that the government is probably not the right place for that. And one of the things that I think that government can do is be a voice, right? They don't actually have to throw money at things, right? They can be a voice to say, hey, you guys, these are good ideas. These are good changes to our country. These are good changes to your personal lifestyle. Maybe make these changes. Maybe encouragement is maybe the best way for government to be involved, as opposed to throwing money at every problem. Okay. Make student debt dischargeable in bankruptcy and cut interest rates on student loans to zero. I actually agree with this. I think I mentioned this in the Chase Oliver platform, and maybe even in Biden's platform. So Biden just wants to forgive student loans across the board, and that's unconstitutional. It's been determined by the Supreme Court to be unconstitutional. It's not the right method to move forward. However, because basically it's not getting rid of the debt, it's having taxpayers pay for the debt, right? And so you can't do that. But what this does is it says, there's, law that says that student loans can't be discharged in bankruptcy. I agree with getting rid of that. I think that if someone is bankrupt and they have the ability to prove through the normal course of bankruptcy proceedings that they should have their debts forgiven, through bankruptcy, of course, then that's something that student loans should be able to be a part of that, and that would be the only time that that a full student loan should be forgiven is in that situation. However, this next section I 100% support. I'm a little iffy on that previous one just because bankruptcy is basically, taxpayers probably end up needing to foot the bill for that. I think there's probably some sort of agreement between the government and the banks that were loaning the money, or whoever was, however that money was being loaned out. The government may end up having to cover those bankruptcy ones, but at least that's that's a reasonable step in my mind. This one's I completely agree with this. Just get rid of the student loan interest. You get rid of the student loan interest, and most of these student loans are paid back. Not most. I'm not going to say most. I don't know the statistics. A lot of people pay off their student loans. They make their payments, and the student loans just never get smaller, or just very slowly do they make any progress, because so much of what they're paying is going to the interest. And so I could see saying, you know what, this is something that just we need to have make some grounds for improvement, and getting rid of that interest amount does seem like a reasonable thing for me. You continue to make your payments back. You repay the loan in the amount that you took out. That interest is just going to be forgiven. That I'm okay with. You may not be, and I understand, but that's something that I could see. And this is coming from a guy who paid off his student loans. I paid my student loans in full, and so it would have been nice to not have had to pay the interest. But looking back on it, I'm okay with someone else not having to pay the interest, even though I did, to move forward on this issue. Okay, and then cut drug costs by half to bring them in line with other nations. Again, this is a subsidy thing, and if you're cutting drugs in half, someone's paying for it. It's not just all of a sudden they're free, or they're 50% cheaper. Otherwise, we would do that on everything. No, it has to be paid for, and so I don't agree with this. I think that drugs should be cheaper, and I think there's a lot of ways that we could get to that point. But just having the government say they need to be 50% subsidized, boom, no, I don't agree with that. All right, so that's a lot of very, very particular things. I would have to say that on his economic policies, that's probably where me and Kennedy disagree the most, but it's still better than what we got going right now. Just throwing that out there. All right, so let's move on to the next position. Well, let's see, what time frame are we at? Oh, we're at 36 minutes. Let's go ahead and end the video now, and I will continue on with the video in a follow-up. I think what I'll do is I'll upload this video today, and then hopefully I finish this up in 2 videos, and I can just upload it tomorrow, the second half tomorrow in the morning, and then that way it's all there before the debate. And then I'll do Trump's probably after the debate, because his platform is something that I want to cover, but it's just I don't think I'm going to be able to get it in before the debate. All right, so anyways, take care, everybody. The next video will start I'll start recording it right after this, and you can watch it probably tomorrow. All right, everybody, take care. Have a good day.